That is wild and crazy. Defies what a pan pizza could be. Though it might be thousands of miles away from Italy, the state of Michigan is home to probably one of the most delicious styles of pizza in existence. Welcome back to Cooking the States, a series where we cook a famous dish from a different state in every episode in an attempt to better understand the true identity of American food. In order to bring you the most authentic, legit Detroit-style pizza recipe, I knew I had to go to the source. So we drove 4.5 hours away to the Motor City, Detroit, Michigan, to see what the hype was all about. Thank you to all my Michigan-based omnivores for DMing me your recommendations. You guys rock. However, in the end, I decided that I had to go to the place where it all began, Buddy's Pizza, for better or worse. Now, Detroit was awesome. We had a great time. We hung out with cool people. We had really good food. The city completely blew me away. All right, how do I say this without pissing a ton of people off? My experience at Buddy's was subpar. The dough just kind of fell flat. It wasn't that flavorful, and the exterior wasn't as crispy as I thought it would be. Not to mention, the toppings and the sauce looked like they were just kind of thrown on sort of sloppily. I don't know, maybe I went on a bad day, maybe the guy making the pizza was new. I'm not gonna dwell too hard on the negative here, but being a spot that was known for starting Detroit-style pizza, for inventing the style, it really wasn't anything to write home about. Which, yes, bummed me out a little bit, but it's fine, we're gonna be fine, it's gonna be fine. Lucky for us, I happen to live very close to a spot known for its literally award-winning Detroit-style pizza. I wanna ask the owner a few D-style P questions, so let's head over and see what it's all about. Taller than me. Not saying much, but. So I'm here with Derek Tong, owner and operator of Pauly G's here in Chicago in the Logan Square neighborhood, and we're gonna talk a little bit about Detroit-style pizza. This man knows what he's talking about.
I try.
What defines Detroit-style pizza?
You know, for me, it was the first time I ever had Buddy's, and it's this fluffy interior with this crispy outer edge, especially that cheese edge, right? That caramelized cheese is everything, and then you want to have that sauce right on top.
How would you describe Detroit-style dough?
It's got to be light and fluffy on the inside, probably anywhere from half an inch to maybe a full inch in height, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And then that bottom should still be crisp. Like any other good pizza, you need to make sure it's nice and crispy.
Detroit-style cheese, what do we got? Does it have to be one thing?
It does not have to be one thing. If you're gonna be a diehard Detroit fan and do it the original OG Detroit style, they do it with brick cheese.
Wisconsin brick cheese.
Wisconsin brick cheese. But you know, ultimately we did a bunch of cheese tests and we found that majority of my family and my close friends preferred a sharp cheddar. And so we started playing around with different sharp cheddars and finding the ones that we like the most. And the key though is that you have to get a young sharp cheddar, because the more it ages, the more oil it releases, and then you get too greasy of a pizza.
Last thing, toppings and topping application. We already kind of talked about the sauce. What about the other stuff? How does this work?
What we do is whenever we think about toppings, we think about what do we want to happen to the toppings. Do we want it to keep most of its original moisture and content, in which case we tuck it under the cheese and protect it? Or do we want to put it on top of the cheese so it gets that extra heat so it roasts up and does something different? So like with our double pepperoni, we got pepperoni under, pepperoni on top, you get chewy pepperoni and crispy pepperoni.
Contrast, baby.
Contrast. Anytime you make pizza, think about, do you want it under the cheese or above the cheese, or do you want it to go on after it's all baked out? Because then there's a whole different experience with every topping that you get.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the insights and Oh, what the man? Oh. Okay. Real quick, I want to interrupt the pizza action to talk to you about the Omnivorous Adam Patreon page. We're doing a lot of cool stuff over there. We got exclusive merchandise, we're doing giveaways, we're doing live cooking demos, a lot of fun, interesting things going on over there. So if you have the means and would like to support our little team here, we would really appreciate it. And you could do so for less than a grande latte from Starbucks per month. All right, enough of that. Let's get back to the za. To the bowl of a stand mixer, add the bread flour, sugar, instant yeast, and salt. Whisk that all around, then pour in the warm water. Attach the dough hook, then mix things on medium-low speed until a shaggy mass forms. Then cut the power and literally do nothing. Let the dough rest for 15 minutes uncovered. This step is called the autolyse. We're just letting the dough hydrate and get a jump start at gluten formation. After the autolyse, bring the mixer up to medium speed and let it run for 8 to 12 minutes, just until the dough begins to look smooth and shiny. Lube up a resealable container, then plop the dough from the stand mixer onto the counter. Now, this is a wet dough, meaning that it has a high hydration ratio of water to flour, which means it's sort of a pain to work with, but just oil your hands up, do your best to work it into a smooth ball, then plop that ball into the oiled container and close it up. Alright, from here you can choose your own adventure. You can plop this on the counter, let it rest for a couple hours and use it immediately. Or better yet, what I'm going to do is plop this thing in the fridge for 1 to 2 days. The long cold fermentation in the fridge is going to allow it to develop flavor. Again, totally optional, but highly recommended. If you'd like to use the dough the day of mixing, then just let it rest on the counter for 2 hours, which is the perfect time to get going on the Detroit-style sauce. There are lots of different philosophies for this. Some people prefer the sauce fresh, others like it robust and cooked. Some people even just use tomatoes straight from the can. We're gonna toe the line between fresh and cooked. Let me show you what I mean. In a medium sauce pot over medium heat, add in the olive oil and minced garlic. Gently cook the garlic for 30 seconds to a minute until it's super fragrant, then add in the crushed tomatoes, salt, sugar, dried oregano, and red wine vinegar. Mix that all around, then bring it all up to a simmer and immediately remove it from the heat and allow it to cool to room temperature. The sauce is semi-robust because we added a few deepening flavor components, but it's also semi-fresh because we barely cooked the tomatoes. It's a good balance of heavy and zingy, perfect for our za. Now, at Paulie G's, they dollop ricotta on their pizzas, and I fell in love with the flavor and just how pretty it looked. I mean, they looked amazing. So I'm whipping up some ricotta to pipe onto our pizza, and this is totally optional. But come on, do you want to be good or do you want to be great? To the bowl of a food processor, add in the whole milk ricotta, a bunch of black pepper, and kosher salt. With the machine running, slowly drizzle in that olive oil, which is going to both emulsify and add flavor to our ricotta. This is a little restaurant trick, but with the machine running, you can add a little bump of xanthan gum. It's going to help smooth your ricotta out, help it hold its shape, and make it look a little shinier. That'd be a stiff peak. Transfer that whipped ricotta to a piping or Ziploc bag, then set it in the fridge until later. Let us talk le cheese. Here we have a young white cheddar and a full-fat, low-moisture mozzarella. If you go to the deli section in any grocery store, you're going to be able to buy cheese like this. Just tell them to slice it off for you in one block. Try to refrain from using pre-shredded or pre-sliced cheeses. Usually there are anti-caking agents on there that could kind of make your cheese all weird and melt weird. You don't want that. Like Derek said, the OG Detroit-style pizza calls for Wisconsin brick cheese, but I really dug the combination of white cheddar and mozzarella that Derek used, so we're gonna go with that. Shred the fromage on the large whole side of a box grater and set that aside. Let's talk toppings, starting with the pep. Let's have a little bit of a pep talk. This is natural casing pepperoni. I happen to live next to a deli that literally hand cures their own charcuteries. However, if you don't live by a butcher or somewhere that does this, look for something like this at the grocery store. Again, in that deli section. What you don't want to buy is that pre-packaged sort of like ball sack plastic bag stuff. They're like neon colored. You don't want them. They're gonna burn on you and get super gnarly in the oven, and they just don't taste that good. So stay away from those and opt for the natural casing. Slice coins of natural casing pep to about 1/8 of an inch thick, then chiffonade some fresh basil into pretty little strips. Before we move on, we gotta talk about Detroit-style pans. The reason Detroit-style pans are so amazing are because they're slightly angled here. That allows the cheese to kind of melt down and sneak down under the crust, creating what's called a Frico, which I'll tell you all about later. These pans arguably are what make Detroit-style pizza. Sure, if you don't have one of these, you could use a 9x13-inch cake pan, but it's not gonna do the same thing. I know going out and buying an extra piece of gear might seem kind of annoying, but if you wanna make real Detroit-style pizza or are planning on making a lot in the future, it's worth the purchase. I'll leave some helpful links below if you wanna pick one up for yourself. The recipe today makes 2 8x10-inch pizzas or 1 10x14-inch pizza. Now is the time to heavily grease our pans. I'm using a mixture of butter and olive oil. It's easier to use room temperature butter for optimal smearability, so highly recommend letting it sit out for a bit before you rub it down your pan. Once the dough has rested for 2 hours, remove it from the container and plop it into the greased container. If you fermented your dough overnight in the fridge, be sure to take it out at least 2 hours before moving on to this step, because cold dough is not easy to work with. You're gonna do your best to spread it out. It is not going to spread out for you. Do your best, get it to the general shape. Then we're gonna cover it, let it rest for 20 minutes. All right. Now that the dough is rested, it'll be a lot easier to manipulate and it will stay put. Work that rested dough into the corners, then cover it up with plastic wrap again and let it proof at room temperature for another 2 hours, or until noticeably puffier and doubled or nearly doubled in size. This is a very important step, do not rush the proof. 1 hour before the dough is finished proofing, situate a baking steel or stone on the middle rack of your oven and preheat it to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Slide the naked pizza into the oven and par bake it for 12 minutes. Then, remove it and let it cool for 5 minutes. We par bake for 2 reasons. 1, see how like the dough kind of constricted and is a lot smaller than the pan now? That gives us room to sneak cheese into the sides, creating that cheese wall, otherwise known as a Frico. That word's gonna come up a lot. It's going to be that cheesy crust that forms on the sides of the pizza. The second thing, if we were to put toppings on before we par baked, they could sink into the pizza and kind of stop it from rising as much. This way, we get ultimate puff. Place on your first layer of roni, then begin adding the cheddar cheese to the sides of the pizza. Lightly push the cheddar down into the cracks of the pizza, but leave some climbing up the walls. Now sprinkle the mozzarella in the middle of the pizza to fill in the frame. Place the remaining pepperoni on top, then set the za back into the 500-degree oven for another 12 minutes. Oh yeah. I know it's tempting, but we gotta let the pizza rest and cool for at least 10 minutes before removing it from the pan. Be very, very careful when you're taking out the pizza if you want to keep your Frico. We don't have any crazy sidewalls right now, but once it's rested for about 10 minutes, remove it from the pan and let it rest on a wire rack for another 5 or so minutes. Look at this. That is a nice color. This is a 10 by 14 inch pizza, so I'm slicing it into 8 equal pieces. Then we're gonna pop it back in the pan, which just kind of makes it easier for serving and decorating. Ladle on 2 even rows of our room temperature sauce, followed by some grated Parmesan cheese, our fresh basil, and finally the dollops of whipped ricotta cheese. Just a little per slice, make it even. Yeah, that is wild and crazy. Defies what a pan pizza could be. This is a pizza of contrasts. It's pretty wild. Whoa, it is just so soft. Like, watch this. It bends to your will. Look at this gluten chasm. It's got like stalactites and stalagmites of gluton. Very tasty. This right here is the definition to Detroit style pizza, the Frico. The cheese crust that forms when that cheese falls down these slopes of the sidewalls here that we talked about. 2 words come to mind with Detroit style pizza: Frico and contrast. This thing has it all. TY so much for watching, all the YouTube guys stuff now. Like the video if you dig it, if you're gonna make Michigan Detroit style pizza. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Regardless, come say what up on Discord. We got a thriving community over there, so come say what up, introduce yourself, post pictures of what you make, whether it be from me or just something that you're stoked about. Come hang. Next episode, we are heading over to Minnesota. You know the drill by now. If you think you know what we're gonna make, comment it below. That's all I got for you for this week, so until next time, toodles.